The knock came like a gunshot in the quiet of my apartment, sharp and unyielding, shattering the stillness of a New York evening. I froze, my paintbrush hovering over the canvas. A half-finished portrait of a man I couldn't forget. It was him, Officer Daniel Harper, the cop who'd turned my world upside down, standing in my doorway with questions I wasn't ready to answer. I'd known Danny for 3 weeks, but it felt like a lifetime. It started with a break-in at my art studio in Brooklyn, a smashed window and a missing painting. He'd shown up in his crisp blue uniform, all broad shoulders and steady eyes, asking about suspects, timelines, and motives. I was a mess, scared, angry, and broke, with no leads to offer. But Danny lingered, his gaze softening when he thought I wasn't looking. He came back the next day, and the day after, each visit less about the case and more about us. That night, as the city buzzed beyond my window, he stepped inside, his badge catching the lamplight. "Elliot, we need to talk," he said, voice low, like he was carrying a secret too heavy to hold. I nodded, my throat tight, and gestured to the couch. He didn't sit. Instead, he crossed the room, his boots heavy on the hardwood, and locked the door behind him. My heart stuttered. Then he turned, and the look in his eyes wasn't that of a cop. It was raw, unguarded, and achingly human. "I'm not here about the case," he admitted, stepping closer. His fingers brushed mine, a spark that made my skin hum. "I'm here because I can't stop thinking about you." My breath caught, the world narrowing to the space between us. In that moment, I wasn't just a struggling artist with a past full of shadows. I was seen, wanted, and terrifyingly alive. But this wasn't just a love story. Danny was a cop in a precinct that didn't take kindly to men like us. And I was hiding something, a secret tied to that stolen painting. One that could ruin us both. The city outside was a labyrinth of judgment. And every touch, every whispered word, was a risk we couldn't afford. Yet there we were, standing too close, hearts pounding like they could outrun the consequences. I'd grown up in a small town upstate, where being gay was a sin whispered about in church pews. I'd fled to New York at 18, chasing freedom and art, but found loneliness instead. My paintings were my voice, bold, colorful, defiant, but they didn't pay the rent. The break-in had gutted me, not just for the loss, but because the stolen piece was personal. It was a portrait of my first love, Jamie, who'd left me when his family found out about us. I'd poured my grief into that canvas, and now it was gone, out there in a world that didn't understand. Danny was different. He'd grown up in Queens, raised by a single mom who worked double shifts. He'd joined the force to make her proud, but the job came with a code of straight, unbreakable. He'd never told anyone he was gay. Not his partner. Not his mom. "It's not safe," he'd said one night over cheap coffee at a diner, his voice barely above a whisper. Not in my world. But with me, he was unguarded, like a man stepping out of a cage for the first time. That night, as he stood in my apartment, the air thick with tension, I wanted to tell him everything about the painting, about Jamie, about the threats I'd gotten since the break-in. Someone knew about me, about us, and they weren't just after art. But Danny's hand found mine, and the words dissolved. He pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead. And for a moment, the world was just us 12 men stealing a fragment of peace in a city that didn't care. "I'm scared, Elliot," he murmured, his voice rough. But I'm more scared of losing this. I didn't know if he meant me or the feeling, but it didn't matter. I kissed him, fierce and desperate, like it could seal us against the storm brewing outside. His arms wrapped around me, strong and certain, and I felt safe for the first time in years. But safety was an illusion. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. I know what you are. Return what's mine, or everyone will know. My stomach dropped. The painting wasn't just art, it was a key to something bigger, something dangerous. And Danny, my Danny, was walking into it blind. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Danny kept coming by, his visits a mix of stolen kisses and careful questions. He was still a cop, after all, and the break-in case wasn't closed. I dodged his probing, afraid to drag him into my mess. The threats kept coming, texts from burner numbers. A brick through my studio window with a scrawled warning, "You can't hide forever." I started sleeping with a baseball bat by my bed, jumping at every creak in the old building. Danny noticed. "You're not telling me something," he said one night, his eyes searching mine. We were sprawled on my couch, his head on my chest. The cities hum a distant lullaby. I wanted to confess, to spill everything about the painting and the shadow hunting me. But I couldn't. Not when his job, his life, was on the line. Being out in his precinct wasn't just a scandal, it could be a death sentence. Instead, I kissed him, slow and deep, hoping it could say what I couldn't. He pulled back, his jaw tight. "Elliot, I'm not just here for this. I need you to trust me." His words cut, because I did trust him more than I'd trusted anyone since Jamie. But trust meant risk, and I wasn't ready to lose him. The truth came crashing down a week later. I was at my studio, cleaning up glass from the latest attack, when Danny showed up unannounced. His face was pale, his uniform rumpled. "They found the painting," he said, voice clipped, "in a warehouse in Red Hook. But there's more, Elliot. It's tied to a guy named Victor Kane." My blood ran cold. Victor was Jamie's older brother, a man with a grudge and connections to some very bad people. The painting wasn't just art, it was evidence. A coded map to a stash of money Jamie had stolen from Victor's crew before he disappeared. I hadn't known when I painted it, but Jamie had used me, embedding secrets in the brushstrokes. "Victor's been asking about you," Danny said, stepping closer. "He's dangerous, Elliot, and he knows about us." My knees buckled. Victor wasn't just after the painting, wanted revenge. For Jamie, for me, for everything. And Danny was caught in the crosshairs because of me. I didn't know. I whispered, my voice breaking. "I swear, Danny, I didn't know what it was." He didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, he took my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. "I believe you," he said. "But we're in this together now." His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. Together meant he was risking everything: his badge, his safety, his future. That night, we made a plan. Danny had contacts, cops he trusted enough to keep quiet. We'd get the painting to the right people, expose Victor's operation, and protect ourselves. But it wasn't simple. Victor's reach was long, and the precinct was a minefield of prejudice. If Danny's secret came out, he'd lose more than his job. We worked in the shadows, meeting in dark corners of the city, passing information like spies in a war we didn't choose. Every moment with Danny felt stolen. Precious. One night, under the flickering lights of a Coney Island pier, he pulled me close, the ocean roaring behind us. "I'd do it all again," he said, his breath warm against my ear. "Even knowing how hard this is, I'd choose you." I wanted to believe we could outrun the danger, that love could be enough. But Victor was closing in, and the threats were getting bolder. A photo of us together, left on my doorstep with a single word: freak. We had one shot to end it. Danny's contact, a detective named Ruiz, agreed to help, but only if we delivered the painting and my testimony. I was terrified, not just of Victor, but of what it meant for Danny. If we went public, his career was over. If we didn't, we'd never be free. The night before the handover, we sat in my apartment, the painting propped against the wall like a ticking bomb. Danny traced circles on my palm, his touch grounding me. "I came out to my mom," he said suddenly, his voice steady. "Told her about you." My heart stopped. "And?" I asked, barely breathing. He smiled, soft and sad. "She said she always knew. She just wants me safe." I broke then, tears spilling over, because it was more than I'd ever hoped for him. But safety was still out of reach. The handover was set for a warehouse in the Bronx, under cover of night. Danny and I went together, the painting wrapped in cloth, our hands brushing as we walked. Ruiz was there with 2 other cops, their faces hard but trustworthy. We handed over the painting, and I told them everything: Jamie, the money, Victor's threats. They listened, took notes, and promised protection. But as we left, a car screeched into the lot, headlights blinding. Victor's men. Danny shoved me behind a crate, his gun drawn. "Stay down," he hissed. Shots rang out, sharp and deafening. I crouched, heart pounding, as Danny fired back, his training kicking in. One of Victor's men went down. Another fled. Ruiz called for backup, and within minutes, the place was swarming with cops. Victor wasn't there, but his men talked, and the painting's secrets led to his arrest by dawn. We should have felt free, but the fallout was brutal. Word got out not just about the case, but about Danny. Someone had seen us, snapped a photo, and sent it to his precinct. By morning, he was suspended, pending an investigation. We hid out in my apartment, the city closing in around us. "I'm sorry," I whispered, guilt choking me. He shook his head, pulling me close. "I'm not," he said. "I'm done hiding." Danny's suspension didn't last. Ruiz and a few others vouched for him, and the department, under pressure from a changing world, let him back. But he didn't stay. He quit, took a job teaching kids in Queens, and moved in with me. We built a life, messy but ours, in a city that was learning to bend. The painting was destroyed, its secrets buried with Victor's conviction. And every night, as Danny's arms wrapped around me, I knew we'd fought for something worth more than safety: truth, love, and a chance to be whole.